All right. It's right about 6:05 now, so we are going to get started. Welcome again. Thank you for joining us tonight. I want to get started and get the meeting going now. So if there's anyone who needs those translation, go ahead and enter it in the chat. And if you're having any difficulties with Zoom, you can't hear anything like that, you can also enter that in the chat as well. All right, so I want to introduce our speaking team tonight. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So as you can see up on the screen, my name is Dana Hoffman. I'm with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. I am a project manager. In this case, I'm also going to be acting as your moderator and facilitator tonight. We also have on the team, if you can wave Bob, Robert Ferns / Bob, we refer to him interchangeably, is our project consultant for the Green Valley Ranch Boulevard project. We also have R.A. Plummer on board. He is our project consultant for the 56th Avenue Improvements project. Laura Wasson is also joining us. She is with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. If you are joining us via the Zoom app, you'll see that we have DOTI up there. That's the acronym that we have for the department. Laura is the DOTI project manager for 56th Avenue. We have Ken McGee on as well. We weren't able to add his picture in time, but Ken McGee is our project manager from DOTI for the Green Valley Ranch project. And then if you've been on for a few minutes, Yvonne Collin is our interpreter and translator tonight for Spanish speakers. So these are the folks who are going to be presenting to you tonight. We also have a few other experts here from the city who may pop up to answer specific questions during the Q&A period. All right. So mentioning that Q&A period, so we do have a pretty open format meeting tonight. You'll see that there is a chat box that you can share your thoughts in, ask questions, etc. We do have that breakout room for Spanish speakers, and we will have several Q&A sessions. During those 2 sessions, you'll have the option to ask us questions either through that chat box, or if you'd like, you can use the raise your hand feature. If you're using the Zoom app, you'll see that sort of option at the bottom, and we'll have a little more information on that in the Q&A slide. And if you're joining us by phone, you can also raise your hand in order to ask a question, and you'll do that by dialing *9 to raise your hand, and it will let our team know. I also just wanted to let you know we have a lot of folks in the room tonight. These are 2 very exciting big projects for Northeast Denver. So I just want to remind folks to be respectful. Please stay muted unless you are asking a question during the Q&A time. And we're all here to learn and share information and take feedback. So respect our folks on the call, your fellow neighbors, and the project managers here. And I also wanted to note, you'll see, we'll flash this information again, but after the meeting tonight, you can continue to share information with us or find out more about these 2 projects. We'll be keeping the websites up to date. And there are several emails set up that you can send questions directly about the project specifics. So you'll see that up there. There's the 56th Avenue widening at gmail.com. And there is the GVRB medians at gmail.com where you can email us. All right. So I wanted to go quickly through the agenda. So if you hadn't realized it already, we are actually covering 2 projects here tonight. The 56th Avenue capacity improvements and safety improvements, and the Green Valley Ranch Boulevard median improvements and multimodal improvements. Because these are 2 big projects that are moving forward on roughly the same schedule in terms of outreach, we wanted to make the most use of your time and not have to ask you to come to 2 meetings to find out what's going on. So we have combined the meetings tonight. Please stick with us. We'll be covering 1 meeting at a time. I mean, not 1 meeting, 1 project at a time, and we'll have plenty of time for you to ask questions about both. All right. So getting into the, oops, sorry, I didn't quite go through the agenda there. If we can flip back. Yep. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here, what the history of these projects are, and then we'll dive into the actual project details themselves and the improvements that we expect from these projects. They are on slightly different timelines overall, even though we are tackling getting out to community now for both. So we'll cover that. And then again, we'll talk about ways that you can be part of the project moving forward. So you can move ahead to the next slide now. All right, so a little bit on the history of how we got to here with these two projects. They both have a long history, and we've seen them in our public outreach and large community plan documents for a number of years. So starting with Plan Blueprint, which led to Denver Moves, which is the image you see up on the top right, which is our citywide plan for how we're going to get around for the next 20 or so years. Both these projects are highlighted as important projects in that. Similarly, the Far Northeast Area Plan, which is your recently completed neighborhood plan, highlight these projects as well. And then there are some studies that have been conducted that really highlight exactly how these projects were meant to move forward. So the Planning and Environmental Linkage Study was completed all the way back in 2008, which helped establish what needed to be done for 56th Avenue to make it run smoothly into the future. And then the Gateway Area Plan, which encompasses the entire Gateway area in Northeast Denver, helped outline how we would fund and which elements should be included on Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. And all of these documents together have led us to these two projects today, and we're really excited that we're getting to the stage of design and construction. All right, so I'm actually now going to turn it over to Bob to talk a little bit more in detail about the Green Valley Ranch Boulevard project.
All right, thank you, Dana. I want to point out our corridor map for Green Valley Ranch Boulevard project. Project corridor is from Chambers Road on the west to Tower Road on the east. That's a 2-mile span of Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. Next slide, please. There we go. Now let's talk about a quick project overview. The job has several significant aspects to it. One of the most interesting and significant aspects, I think, are the addition of protected bike lanes to Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. That will be on both the north side and the south side of the project corridor that I just described. And this really conforms to the vision that the city has for increasing bicycle mobility through the corridor. And this conforms with the Denver Moves update. And Dana talked about Denver Moves just a little bit ago. So this really is expanding on that vision and bringing that to life. There is a project similar to this, similar to the protected bike lanes that are planned on Green Valley Ranch Boulevard, just east of Tower Road on Green Valley Ranch, between Tower Road and Piccadilly Road. There are protected bike lanes in place, and that construction is just wrapping up. That project represents quite a bit of what you will see on this project corridor that I just described. Very similar. Another, I think, important aspect of our project is the completion of sidewalks on the south side of Green Valley Ranch between Pena and Telluride. There's about a 3,000-foot stretch where there is no sidewalk at all. And I think this is an important addition to that corridor because it will complete pedestrian connectivity throughout the corridor, and that'll be a good enhancement for the community. Along with the project, we'll be providing irrigated landscaped medians throughout that entire corridor that I described. And there will be a new traffic signal at the intersection of Green Valley Ranch Boulevard and Kittredge Street. Okay, here we go. Let's just take a quick look at the existing cross section of Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. This is just a way to visualize what I just described. So today's existing condition, you have a fairly wide median in most of the roadway and 2 vehicular travel lanes in each direction, east and west. And we have, for the most part, 8-foot wide sidewalks detached sidewalks all through the corridor, except for that one stretch I mentioned, just between Pena and Telluride. And let's take a look then at what our proposed configuration will be. So what we're proposing to do is take that wide median that's in the middle, narrow that up, shift our vehicular travel lanes to the inside, and that will free up some space on the outside of the existing roadway for the introduction of the protected bike lanes. I think it's interesting and important to note that we're not planning to widen Green Valley Ranch Boulevard to execute any of these plans. It's simply utilizing that existing space that we have today. And then, as I mentioned before, we will be adding the detached 8-foot wide sidewalk between Telluride and Pena Boulevard. And that really summarizes our project. Dana, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Appreciate you summarizing that. And I've seen some folks starting to pop questions in the chat. That's great. We'll get to that shortly. But we did want to start by having a little poll that's always really helpful for us. So if you are joining via the Zoom app, you should have a polling question popping up right now. For those of you who are joining by phone, you can't participate directly through that app, but I would love to have your comments in the chat. So I'm going to read that poll question aloud now. And if you could go ahead and select the answer that makes the most sense to you. So what Green Valley Ranch Boulevard improvements will be most useful and beneficial to you? And here are some answers that we had. So additional sidewalk on the south side of the GVR Boulevard, enhanced medians, new on-street protected bike lanes, new traffic signal, or all of the above. And if you could just share which of those things feel most important to you, we're really interested to know. I'll give you about 30 seconds. I'm not really looking at my watch, but I'm going to estimate that's about 30 seconds. So if you can wrap up, and we'll go ahead and share that poll live. It's always good to see what's important to folks. All of the above, not surprising. Yeah, we're excited to include all of these elements in this project. So it looks like we had 8% who said additional sidewalk, 8% enhanced mediums, 23% felt that new on-street protected bike lanes was important. 21% said new traffic signal, and 41% of you folks said all of the above. So thank you for sharing that information. All right, if we can move, yep, great, to the next slide. So just a reminder for everyone to stay on mute if you can, keep us moving through seamlessly. All right, so here's some details about the Green Valley Ranch Boulevard project. We are going to jump to 56th Avenue after a question and answer period, but this is the way to find out more and keep up to date with the project. So you'll see that the website for the project that will keep up to date is, we have a bit.ly up there, so bit.ly, bit.ly / GVRB project. That's the website. I believe if you Google that or go to the projects on the Denver website, you will also easily find that. And we have a specific email set up for the project as well, which is again, gvrbmedians@gmail.com. So if after this presentation, we don't fully have time to answer all your questions, or you have additional comments to share with us, please do email us and look to that website to find out updates as the project moves along. All right, so I see some of these rolling in already. Let's go ahead and move on to questions and comments. I do want to open it up, but just a few reminders before I do that. So we have probably 10 minutes right now, and then we'll have another question and answer period at the end. I think we should have plenty of time for that. So don't worry if you don't get it answered just now. So you can go ahead and ask that question in the chat. Or again, if you're joining us by phone, go ahead and dial *9. That will raise your hand. And you can similarly raise your hand at the bottom, and that circled, you'll see raise hand at the bottom of your screen if you want to speak your question aloud. So go ahead and get started doing that. I'm going to pull up what we've gotten in so far, and I'll start sending these off to our project team to help answer questions. All right. So first question that I see here is from Sincere. I hope I didn't butcher your name. So will there be any green infrastructure as part of this project? Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually gonna turn that over to Laura to start us off, and I can add something at the end there. Laura, do you wanna give that a shot?
Hi there. So this project will include some landscaped medians, but it's like, I guess I would want a little bit more clarification about what you're asking as far as green infrastructure goes. But we are planning to do landscaped medians, if that answers your question.
And Sincere, if you want to have something more green, whoop, if we can work to mute some of the folks, that will help keep things clear. So Sincere, just to add to that, yeah, there's a lot of different meanings for different folks about what green infrastructure means. From the city standpoint, we tend to prioritize like clean water infrastructure as part of our projects. We tend to prioritize areas that show up in our maps as needing that, that clean water infrastructure the most. This particular area is not rated very high for that. So we do think that this includes some greening elements with the landscaping of the median, but is not specifically targeted as a green infrastructure project. But if you were looking for something more specific, go ahead and enter another question in the chat for us. All right, so I see another question from Scott Gilmore. Thanks for joining us, Scott, tonight. So you asked, how wide would the median be when completed? At this time, it's 40 feet wide. All right, so I'm actually gonna turn that over to Bob. Can you speak to that in a little more detail?
You bet. Yeah, the proposed raised medians, once we narrow up the existing, will be about 20 feet wide. So there should be plenty of opportunity left for landscaping and other items that we need there.
Okay.
Dana, can I ask a question? It's Scotty.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. Sensor Ray actually works for me. She's our sustainability and resiliency planner. And I think her question kind of ties into this. Is there any ability to try to capture any storm water or any other types of runoff to in any of the right-of-way landscaping or even in the median landscaping to try to improve water quality as it comes off of Green Valley Ranch Boulevard? Just trying to use these different areas for multi-purposes and also providing some water to some of these landscape areas instead of having to just depend on irrigation.
Bob, can you speak more? But that I think could be part comment, so.
Yeah, I'll take that, Dana. There are discussions that will be had with Denver at this point in time to see if we can integrate any green infrastructure into the project. It's not a given at this time that we will do so, but we are going to open that dialogue with the city. We haven't really gotten far enough into our design to get into the particulars of that. But as we come forward with the design and we see if there are opportunities, that's something I would bring forward to the city and we would have a discussion on it.
Robert, we might want to add also that there's quite a bit of hardscape in these islands as well that's not landscaped, especially near the turn pockets, intersections. And there's a limited area by width and depth of these islands that can accept certain features of water quality and landscaping.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Ken. And that's why I say we don't really have enough in-depth design yet to go further with detailed discussions on it. But Ken is right. There's only a certain amount in the middle of these medians that we can utilize for that purpose. For example, where the left turn pockets, left turn lanes are developed throughout the corridor, that will all be hardscape it will all be hard surface. But again, not knowing any more than we do right now, we would certainly investigate that with the city.
And
Thank
Scott,
you.
this is Deb
Yep.
Turner. At this time, I don't believe that this corridor has been identified for green infrastructure, nor is there funding for it, but we will certainly follow up on that.
All right, yeah, and we're happy to chat further with you about that, Scott. That's a really good comment, but I think all those things are true at this point. I want to move on to, I see a bunch of other questions coming in. So there's a question here from Tom. Will the PBLs, the protected bike lanes, include bollards, and how far apart will they be spaced? The short answer is yes, but I'm going to throw it again back to Bob to talk a little more in detail what those bollards and what the vertical separation should look like.
Yeah, the protected bike lanes do have vertical elements. They are vertical posts with reflective material on them. They're attached down to the paved surface of the roadway. I don't have the exact spacing right now. Our traffic engineer may be able to shoot that information to me while we're still on.
Bob, the spacing will be 40 feet, just like east of Tower Road.
Perfect. Yep. And I was going to reference that corridor. This really will be almost a mirror image of what's out there east of Tower today. Thanks, John.
Yep, so that's a good point. For most of you folks who are living out there, this is going to be familiar, but we do have another protected bicycle lane project that has very recently been implemented just a little ways down the road. So we are reflecting that design in this project. So what you see out there is likely going to be very, very similar to what we anticipate the ultimately design of this project to be at this moment. All right, I'm going to move to our next question. Thank you guys, keep them coming. This one's from Larry. So why not xeriscape the landscaping for this part of the project? And second to that, how about xeriscaping, and what about a protected crosswalks or an overpass? Laura, I think I would throw that to you.
Okay, so as far as the xeriscaping, the city kind of just prefers to have vegetation in the medians. And so I don't really have a better answer than that, other than that's kind of what we prefer. It looks nicer in our opinion. And the Parks Department does a really good job of maintaining the medians, making sure that the vegetation is alive and looking good. And so we have developed kind of a median standard, so to speak, that we will be using along this project as well as other projects in the area. So it will be kind of consistent throughout the whole entire area and just look really nice. As far as protected crosswalks or an overpass, there will not be an overpass, but there will be protected crosswalks at signalized intersections so that pedestrians and cyclists have specific phases of the signal phasing that they can safely cross intersections. But there will not be an overpass on the project.
I have another question here from Jeff. What is the difference between a detached and an attached sidewalk? Great question, Jeff. We tend to use our lingo a lot when we do this. So attached is just a fancy term for the sidewalk that is directly adjacent to the curb and then the street. So when we have an attached sidewalk, it's simply directly adjacent to the street versus a detached sidewalk where we have a tree lawn or a lawn space. There's a lot of different terms we use, but basically there's a separation after the curb to the beginning of the sidewalk. And that's what we call a detached sidewalk. So in general, detached sidewalks are going to feel more comfortable for pedestrians. So they are the city's standard. And Bob, am I missing anything about the nature of the detached sidewalks and the design that you wanted to add, or does that cover it?
That was perfect.
Okay, great. We have lots of questions and we still have a bit of time, so I'm going to run a little over 10 minutes. I think we'll have plenty of time to move through our next section. So we'll just go a little longer than 10 minutes. So I have a question from Frank here. Any plans for protected bike lanes connecting streets such as Chambers and Memphis? Frank, I'm going to take a shot at answering that question as well. So I wish I had all of the connections in my head, but we do have a broader plan for all future bike connections for Green Valley Ranch and across the city. And that is in Denver Moves, and you can look it up to see exactly what all the planned connections are. I do think that specific to Chambers, there are no plans to have an on-street protected bike lane on Chambers. Parts of Chambers do have a shared walk that's existing. I believe, don't quote me on this, I'm sorry, don't quote me on it, but I do believe that that shared walk, so it is a wide sidewalk, does extend down pretty far from 56 and may extend all the way down to GVR. And then on Memphis, I can't recall, so I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. If you wanna include your email in the chat, I could directly answer that, but it's also—
Dana, I can jump in here actually.
Oh, thanks, Paige, I appreciate that.
Paige Colton, I'm on the bike ped planning team, and right now there's no proposed facility for Memphis because of the proposed trail connection to the east of there that's kind of unbuilt right now. But everything is also in the far northeast area plan, and that's kind of our latest understanding from the community, from you all, of what bike connections you want in this area.
Awesome, thanks for jumping in, Paige. All right. So we have another question from Tom here. So will the irrigation consist of purple or recycled water? And I'm gonna throw that to Bob again.
We don't quite know the answer to that one yet. We know that there is some recycled water in the corridor. How much of it's available and whether we can access it to the extent that we need to needs to be investigated. But that's something that we will be doing in the near future, is looking at that as an option.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question here from Laura. Has there been any early utility coordination that has occurred to date with key utility stakeholders? And I would ask Ken or Laura to speak to that.
Sorry, I was muted. As far as early utility coordination, that is part of the responsibilities for the design team for Moeller. And I believe that some of that has already been done. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's already been some effort to reach out with utility stakeholders.
That's correct, Laura. We've taken the first step in identifying who is out there and the approximate location of the utilities in the corridor. So as our design advances, we'll try to determine where we might have potential conflicts, and we'll go from there in coordinating with those utilities.
All right, thank you both. I'm gonna have just one more question here, and then we're gonna have to move on to the next set. So this is from Juan. I wanted to know whether the median on Tower Road would also be considered in this project. Laura, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, I can do that. So the median on Tower Road is, it will be part of a separate project. However, the medians on Tower Road are in the city's kind of in our backlog projects. As you all know, we've had to cut a lot of funding because of COVID. So I can't speak as to like the timeline of when those will be done, but they are in the city's backlog for projects to be completed in the near future. But it will not be part of the Green Valley Ranch project.
All right, thanks, Laura. All right, thank you guys for asking question. I know there are a couple more waiting. We'll have more time at the end of the meeting, but I really do want to make sure that we have time to cover the 56th Avenue project as well. So we're going to move on and we'll have another Q&A session at the end. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura now to talk through the details of 56th Avenue.
Okay. So as Dana mentioned earlier, we're going to discuss two different projects tonight. The 56th Avenue project is obviously along 56th Avenue, and it stretches from Peoria to Pena Boulevard. And it is it's quite an extensive project to improve capacity on 56th, as well as improve pedestrian and cyclist movements through the corridor and connections to the Montbello neighborhood and the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. So we can go to the next slide. So kind of an overview of what all the project will include. Right now, 56th Avenue has one lane in each direction, but with the final project, we will have an additional lane in each direction. So it'll be a 4-lane roadway from Peoria to Pena. We will also be adding a multi-use path along the north side of 56th Avenue. If you're familiar with that corridor, you know there is a path on the south side. And so it'll be something a little bit similar to that on the north side, so that cyclists and peds can move about on either side of 56th Avenue. In addition, there will be connections to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal from the Montbello neighborhood. That will happen via crosswalks at signalized intersections. And like I mentioned a second ago, the main purpose of this project is to enhance safety for all the people who use this corridor. And so we are paying very close attention to improving safety for both vehicles as well as walkers and bicyclists. And then we will be, I guess, kind of on that safety aspect, we will be revising the intersection turning movements. So you will see new signals at several intersections, but then the median that we're installing will limit some turning movements at some intersections, so that you can only turn right in or right out of certain intersections. And then the last piece is that we will be improving the drainage along 56th Avenue as well as along Uvalde Street. If you live in that neighborhood, you know that drainage has been an issue for quite some time. And so part of this project will be increasing the capacity of the drainage in the Uvalde channel, and then also just increasing capacity for drainage along 56th Avenue. Next slide. So kind of our project goals, what we're wanting to achieve through all of these changes along the corridor is we want to develop a more convenient and safer access to the Montbello neighborhood from 56th Avenue. If you live in Montbello, you know that 56 can be quite a dangerous road. And so our main goal is to make that safer for all the residents in Montbello. With that, we want to improve mobility and capacity through along the thoroughfare and provide safe access from the neighborhood to access the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. If you live in Montbello, you're so close to all of the trails at the Arsenal, all of that open space. It's just a great thing for you to take advantage of. And so we are providing safe access from the neighborhood to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. We also would like to connect seamlessly to the project that is occurring right now at 56th and Pena Boulevard. So we will tie into that so that it'll be one nice new roadway through there. Like I mentioned, we will be installing medians to both enhance pedestrian safety as well as vehicular safety. And then we're just trying to establish 56th Avenue as a gateway to the Montbello and Parkfield neighborhoods. It'll be a really great street, and part of the focus is just to make it a really nice street, something that the residents can really be proud of. Next slide. So this slide right here kind of depicts what is out there right now. As you can see, there's an existing path on the south side of 56th. You have one lane in each direction, as well as the kind of the turn lane that's in between the two travel lanes. And then on the north side, you just have kind of the open space and then the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. Next slide. So this slide shows you what the new roadway will look like. We will be keeping the existing path that's on the south side of 56, so you really won't see any changes there. But the existing 56th roadway will become the eastbound travel lanes, and then we'll have our median with some plants and trees and landscaping, and then we will have 2 travel lanes in the westbound direction, another grass buffer, and then a new multi-use path on the north side. So this will be really great for anyone accessing the arsenal and just wanting to go out for a walk or ride their bike. You now will have a path on either side of 56th Avenue. So all of that sounds great. Now you want to know when we're going to give it to you, right? So any day now we will be releasing the RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. And this is for contractors and design consultants to submit their qualifications to be able to perform the project. In early 2021, we will take all of the RFQs that we receive and we'll shortlist those and invite a few select teams to participate in the request for proposals. And that will be in early 2021. And then the RFP process will take a few months. And so we expect to give award for the contract in fall of 2021. So a little less than a year from where we are right now. And then you will see construction happening either late 2021 or early 2022, depending on the design timeline for the design build team. So we're not going to be out there tomorrow, but hopefully in about a year to a year and a half, you'll see some changes happening on that corridor. So I mentioned that we were going to be installing some new signalized intersections. And this graphic here shows you that we will be upgrading the signal at Peoria, adding a signal at Uvalde, adding a signal at Crown, upgrading the signal at Chambers. Upgrading the signal at Chambers and adding a new signal at Memphis. So all of these intersections will be a lot safer for vehicles, for pedestrians, for bicyclists. We'll have crosswalks and everything at those intersections. All of the yellow dots that you see are intersections that will become right in, right out. So if you're headed westbound on 56th, any of these areas where there's a yellow dot, you will not be able to turn left into those, nor will you be able to turn left out of those. It'll be right in, right out. The point of this is to really improve safety along the corridor. So next slide. And this one shows some of the bike and ped improvements that we were doing as part of this project. Like I've mentioned, we're putting a new trail in along the north side of 56 that stretches the whole length of the corridor. The 2 yellow dots are new parking areas and trailheads for the arsenal. If you've driven in this area, you've noticed that those are in fact in and complete. And so we will have pedestrian and bicyclist access to those new trailheads to get into the arsenal. And then coming down the line, not part of this project, there will be a new bike and ped facility on Peoria Street as part of a separate project, but that is coming soon. So next slide. Now I'll turn it back over to Dana.
Thanks, Laura, for going through that. We wanted to keep you guys on your toes with another quick polling question. These are very helpful for us. So if you are joining us via the application, you should see that question pop up just now. If you're on the phone, if you could provide your perspective in the chat, that would be great. So the question is, what 56th Avenue improvements will be the most useful and beneficial to you? So continuous multi-use trail, that enhanced median, the planned additional travel lanes that Laura talked about, additional travel signals that we just highlighted, or all of the above. And we'll give you again about 30 seconds to share which of these items are of highest priority to you. And if there are other items that we missed, then you can go ahead and add those into the comment section as well in the chat. All right, you can go ahead and wrap that up. That would be awesome. Before we get to questions, let's see what the polling result was. Okay, well, it looks like the big winner here is additional travel lanes. So we had 13% say continuous multi-use trail, 3% that enhanced median, 45% saying those additional travel lanes, 8% the additional traffic signals, and 33% all of the above. Yeah, okay, so additional travel lanes are the priority, but we think that all of those are important. Okay, thank you so much for doing that. And let's go ahead and move on to the summary. Let's move to the next slide. Great. So again, these are separate projects. So if you want to follow 56th Avenue and how this project's proceeding, it does have a specific project landing page on the Denver website. And the bit.ly version of that website is down at the bottom there. So it's bit.ly/56th Avenue widening. And again, I have Googled this website and you are able to find it when you look up 56th Avenue corridor or 56th Avenue widening. And then the email is 56th Avenue widening@gmail.com if you want to ask additional questions or provide additional comments to us after the meeting tonight. And with that, I'm gonna open this up for questions. We have significant time to answer questions for you all, about 40 minutes that we can open the floor and have a good conversation with you all. As a reminder, if you can be respectful, we're doing great at being respectful and keeping muted tonight. If you do want to raise your hand and instead of using that chat feature, you can dial *9 or you can click that raise hand feature or keep on entering those questions in the chat box. All right, so let's go ahead and open it up. I'm going to see some questions have already been flowing in while Laura was talking. All right, so I see a question here from Patrick. So when will the intersection of 56th Avenue and Telluride Street be completed? So Patrick, as you saw, it's actually not part of this project. One of you on the project team happens to know that information, you can pop in, but I think I may be the best to answer for you. If I recall correctly, that is one of the signals that we are coordinating with the developer to get completed, and we don't always know the exact timeline of those. But if you can leave your email or contact me after, and that's dana.hoffman@denvergov.org, I can follow up with you and give you a little more detail about the timeline for that signal, but is not part of the 56th Avenue project. So it is on a different schedule. All right. I see someone has raised their hand. So if your number ends in 7189, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or we can unmute for you. And go ahead and ask your question. That's the
yes, my question is the south side of 56 between Memphis and Pena. Are they going to be putting a sidewalk there and a crosswalk to get to First Creek Park?
All right, thanks for that question. Laura, can you speak to that? South side of 56th Avenue between Memphis and Pena. We may have lost Laura for a minute here.
Oh,
This is
Dana,
I can probably,
One second.
real quick.
Sorry, Larry, let's finish this question first. Deb, can you speak to that then?
Yes, I can. They will be constructing a sidewalk on the south side. There will be continuous sidewalks all the way through the Pena corridor and past Peoria Street on both sides of the street.
Great.
Hello, Dana. I don't have a hand raised symbol to join in the conversation.
Oh, that's okay. If you don't see it at the bottom of your screen, that's the way to do it. But since you have the table and we have plenty of time, go ahead and ask your question.
All right, thank you. And I apologize for breaking protocol. Once this project gets started, what are the plans to help the citizens of Montbello to survive the additional traffic that'll probably come through as you start construction? Will those detours be routed through our neighborhood? How are we going to manage that?
Yeah, I'm gonna have Laura answer that as well. There's not a finalized construction plan, but there is a good idea. So Laura, can you speak to what we anticipate for construction and routing of traffic? I think you may still be on mute there, Laura. Looks like we're gonna have a little bit of a technical difficulty here. I'm gonna let Laura sort that out. I do believe Larry.
One more quick thing then. I want to say that what's really important for us here, I believe, is the protection of the folks who will be going back and forth across 56th Avenue. And I really believe having overpasses where we can walk over 56 to get to those, get to the arsenal is really, really critical. Since we are on the design stage right now, I would strongly suggest those folks who are responsible for that part of this project to consider that strongly.
Okay. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate that comment. I know we've talked about that idea before. In general, the city's research shows that people don't tend to use overpasses even when they are present, and they are quite expensive, so that'd be very difficult to accommodate with that with this project. But we will keep that in mind, and definitely making sure that those crossings are safe. And I heard that Deb may be able to speak more to the construction traffic, so I'm going to let her answer that part of your question.
Right, Larry, and although we can't say exactly how the contractor is going to build it, but since all the widening is going to be to the north, we're assuming they're going to come in and build the 2 northbound lanes, or which will end up being the ultimate westbound lanes first. So then they'll switch traffic over and then do the existing lane second. So there shouldn't be any routing through your neighborhood. The road's not going to be closed. It might be a couple weekends as they turn on traffic signals or transition the old traffic signals to the new traffic signals that you might see some interruption. But we don't foresee detouring through your community at all.
Okay, thanks for that, Deb. I'm going to keep you on tap. We have a question here from Pam. Will there be a traffic light installed at 56 and Uvalde?
Yes, there will. Yeah, that will be one of the new traffic signals that we're installing. And as we do the drainage improvements and we're installing, it's one of the slides, the previous slide shows all.
Yep. Deb, you're breaking up a little bit, but the short answer that she gave you there from Deb is that yes, there is going to be a signal there with all the crossing improvements for pedestrians, and that should really help with access into that new Arsenal entrance. All right, we have a question here from John. He asks, why stop at Peoria? Seems somewhat arbitrary. Is there consideration of continuing along 56 to Central Park Boulevard? Perhaps the connections to Rocky Mountain Arsenal Trails makes this connection. Thank you. John, I'm curious if you're talking about the trail or the widening or both. I'm going to assume, unless we hear from you, you're talking about the trail. So I'm going to turn that back over to Deb, unless Laura, you think you are audible again. Nope. Technical difficulties tonight, so I'm going to let Deb answer that one.
No, that's a very good question. And I think when this project was originally scoped, yeah, we did not look past Peoria Street. We were concerned about doing the capacity improvements from Peoria where it's only 2 lanes and expanding that. I believe there's development that, no, actually, no, that's part of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, but we do probably need to look at that, extending that multi-use trail in the future, but it is not part of this project.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, John, that is a great point. So we'll be looking into that. And you saw that Paige popped up. She's one of the folks on our planning team, and she can take that down for consideration as well. These are our long-term planning documents, but we're always looking to see where there might be gaps and connections. I see that Chester Johnson raised his hand. Chester, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your question?
Am I unmuted yet?
You are.
Okay. Yeah, I want to bring up a couple of points, and I'm glad to hear one that I mentioned at our last meeting. The walkover. Everybody's trying to pass that up. And I see it was brought up again tonight. And I think that we need to take a serious look at a walkover, not necessarily on Crown, but possibly Uvalde is where you're going to have a stoplight, and there's 4-lane traffic coming off of Uvalde going into 56 there. So I still think that we need to talk about that walkover. Yeah, the whole complex is going to cost money, and that's an excuse. We don't have to use that excuse right now because we're trying to work towards the future. If you ever take the road that goes all the way around off of 56 West, going up to Havana, I think it is, and taking that route going into the Arsenal, you know, where you turn behind the soccer field and so forth to get into the Arsenal there. There's so many houses in there that it blows your mind. Okay, so we gotta start thinking traffic conscious. That's why I keep pushing and so involved in this thing, because I've lived out here long enough where I've seen it. You know, like we said last week, 56 was a disaster waiting to happen. And now we're afraid to spend the money to move it. Well, you know, my taxes, I've been paying taxes ever since I've been out here. So give me something. Yeah. But anyway, we really need to take a look at the walkover. I mean, it's a serious situation for the future. There's a lot of people that are going to be, you know, going back and forth over that. And also all the traffic that's going in, as I just discussed, going the back way into the Arsenal there. There's already thousands of homes back there, probably not that many, but they're building constantly. You already got a cluster, you know, so we're looking at a problem now where we'll have to go back and spend $10 million next year, you know, and so forth. So I'm through, Gavin. Thank you. I appreciate it, but it's something that's got to be done. Thank you.
Thank you for your passion, Chester. And I hear you guys. I can promise to make sure that we will go back as a project team and discuss that a little bit more. I'll be honest that it's a heavy lift, but we do want to listen to what the needs of the community are. So we'll take that back and discuss what that could look like. All right. I see a question here from Scott. So there will be no way to turn into the new trailheads if you are heading east on 56. Yeah, so I'm gonna send that off to Deb. He's asking if there would be a way to turn into one of the new trailheads into the Rocky Mountain National Arsenal if you're heading east, given the medians.
I believe there are Chambers and Uvalde, and I think you would have to probably make a U-turn, add those signals and proceed, because when they did the design on those, they did not line them up at the intersection. That was done by not by them, so we were part of that. But yeah, it was made. The decision was made not to put the entrances right at the intersection. So yeah, you would have to make a U-turn and then turn those trailheads. Yes, there will not be direct turns into those. It would make it too dangerous, or for safety reasons, we couldn't have turns into those.
Okay, thanks, Deb. All right, question here from Tom. Are there any extra safety measures planned to protect deer and other wildlife at the refuge? Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually gonna turn that over to Laura. I think you're back on. Nope.
Hi. Hey, Dana, it's Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
I've been involved in those projects on the new access points, the one at Uvalda and the one at Chambers. They're offset a little bit from those two streets, and that's why I asked that question. So it's good to know that people will be able to at least make that U-turn and access in there. That is where you would have the most concern of wildlife escaping the arsenal at those two access points. They have installed one-way gates so people can enter through a system of gates, and the deer and the other wildlife cannot get out of the arsenal. There's always going to be some instances of deer might be able to get out certain areas or through holes in the fence, but they have designed that fence to make it so deer cannot get through the fence.
Hey, thanks for jumping in with that, Scott. That makes a lot of sense. All right, there's a question from Rupert. Why is parking being added? Is it for ADA trail access? I think you are also referring not to this project, but the arsenal. If we're wrong, go ahead and write another question in there. But yeah, so those are new parking lots. They're to provide access for those who choose to drive to the arsenal, as well as they provide that sort of better walking and biking access when combined with our trail. But I think there was a desire on the part of the arsenal and on the part of many of the partners here at the city to make sure that there was access for all users to access those trails from different locations beside the main entrance. So the trailheads include parking. All right. So I think those were all the new questions, but we had a couple questions left from our earlier presentation on Green Valley Ranch. So there was a question from Juan. I wanted to know whether the median on Tower Road would also be considered in this project. Oh, I believe that was answered already. And unfortunately, we aren't including that median as part of this project. It is on the broader list of sort of needs for the city to address those. I saw another comment that there is sometimes trash buildup and other debris in those medians. We are aware of that. You can always call into 311. We work with our partners, and DOTI also will go out and clean those up on an intermittent basis. And we do intend to address the tower medians in the long term, but unfortunately we couldn't include them in this project. All right. There's a question here as well from Larry. So with the proposed Costco project at Memphis and Airport Road, this will produce potential foot traffic from homes on, looks like that comment wasn't quite finished, but I think you're referring to how there may be some additional foot traffic on GVR in order to access that Costco. I think that was a comment. So thank you for sharing that. We are definitely aware of that large project coming in that area. So we'll keep that in mind as we look at the GVR project.
Well, the intent of that, and I apologize if we didn't get through.
That's okay.
The intent of that comment was going back to, again, a cross over the road rather than, walking across, your normal way to get from one side of the street to the other. You're going to have folks from the north side of Green Valley Ranch and that housing complex, those two housing complexes over there. They're just walking across those streets, and the kids and what have you. I just believe that the cost needs to be looked at, of course, but I don't know what kind of price can you put on folks, getting mowed down by traffic because their enthusiasm of getting over, to the other side, particularly with that new development over there. So please, please, please consider that, as well as what we were talking about in respect to 56th Avenue.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, Larry. That makes sense. All right. Looks like the last active question, and there's some comments that we also may want to talk through tonight since we have time, but there's a question here from Jeff. Is there a timeline for the GVR project? When can we expect completion? So yeah, if we could maybe move the slide deck back to that timeline. And Bob, if you could talk through that one more time.
You're on the 56th Avenue timeline.
Yeah, I don't believe we had a timeline published for this one, Dana.
Oh, well, we'll get one up on the website, but if you could just talk through the expectation and we'll make sure that we add that information online so it's easy to find.
Yeah, and I can tell you what I know about the project, but I don't want to misrepresent the timeline, so I would invite anybody else to chime in. The gap sidewalk, the missing piece of sidewalk that I spoke about earlier, my understanding is that is slated for construction early in 2021. As far as the other elements of the design we talked about tonight, I don't have specific information on a construction timeline there. There might be other folks here tonight that can address that.
Yeah, Deb, can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sure, yes. I know Bob is going to be designing all the medians and bike lanes on Green Valley Ranch Boulevard. So we are getting additional funding in 2021. So it's our intention once the design is finished in July to go out to bid for what we can afford to do next year too. So we're going to try to complete as much as Green Valley Ranch Boulevard probably in 21 and 22. So you should see a significant portion of it done. But does depend on the costs that come in on the project.
And we'll learn that as we go through the design, right?
Correct, yes. And get a contractor on board.
Okay, so yeah, stick with the web page. We'll try and keep that updated as we know more about the final design and the project schedule as we get that information. All right, question here from Michael. Is this session being recorded? And will it be available to review later? Yeah, Michael, so we always provide at least a summary on the webpage. We'll talk to the project team to make sure that all that information is available for you. All right, looks like we have another question that maybe came in. Yep, here from Jeff. I'm primarily wondering about the traffic signal at Kittredge in terms of timing. Yep, so Deb, are you able to field that?
Is that the one at 56th? Then I'm not sure exactly which one we're talking about.
This would be the proposed traffic signal at Kittredge and GVR.
Bob, you might have to help me with this one. I don't know if that is part of this project. Is that part of what you're designing with this project?
It is. We are planning on putting a signal in, or at least designing one at Kittredge and Green Valley Ranch. I think the timing of that would be somewhat as Deb described, based a lot on available funds and how that fits in with the overall scheme for construction along the corridor. But I don't have any other specific information than that.
No, we can certainly look at the schedule and the funding and give an answer to that one as soon as we can, probably by the end of the year or in the first quarter of 2021.
Jeff, you feel free to unmute if there's more to that question. Hopefully that answered it for you.
Oh, I think that answers as best as you guys are able to now. Thank you.
Yeah, just stick with us as we go through design. We'll learn more about that. And as you know, funding is a little challenging. We do think we can get through all of this project in the next year or so, but we just don't have the details. So, all right, a few more.
One thing we could add to that signal, Robert, is that it is a full turning movement intersection signalized. It's not going to be limited right in, right out. There will be full movements there, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you both. All right, so regarding the GVR Boulevard improvements, is any financing coming from the Ebert Metropolitan District east of Telluride? Oh boy, Deb, do you have that off the top of your head? We do have multiple funding sources for this project.
Right, and some of it's from the Gateway District, but I couldn't tell you specifically if it's from that one or not, but we could certainly find out and let you know.
Yeah, Tom, we have about 4 or 5 different funding sources. I recall Gateway and not the Ebert Metro, but if you want to follow up with us, we can get you the details of all the different funding sources.
Yeah, that's my recollection too, Dana. I don't think it does, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Yep. Yep. This was originally part of the Gateway plan. So it was, I believe, all ultimately going to be funded through the Gateway fee program, and then the city has found additional funding to bring it faster. But again, we can confirm that with you if you'd like, if you want to follow up after the meeting. All right, let's see. Question here from Rupert. Thank you for the parking follow-up. Okay, great to hear all the uses included and maybe some bike parking and or repair stations. Otherwise, hope to see ADA and restriction that deter abandoned vehicles and camping. Okay, yeah, thanks for that additional information, Rupert, about that question. I don't 100% know if bike parking is included. I believe it is when I looked at those plans. Scott, are you still on? Is that something that you are
Yep,
familiar with?
I'm on. That is definitely something we can consider. We can look at those parking lots that have been created were built through a FLAP grant, a federal land access program grant, which was amazing. And DOTI really helped on that, and the Arsenal has helped on that. It's been a great project to increase access. We can definitely look at some bike corrals or something to place at those 2 parking lots. And we will be enforcing park rules and regulations in those 2 lots. That means those lots will close at 11 and open at 5. So overnight parking will not be allowed in those lots. So just so you're aware of that.
All right. We just did time check. We have about 15 minutes left in our discussion. I think there may be a few more questions that roll in. I also saw that several of you had comments. We are definitely taking down comments about the project that we can consider as we go through the design. So thank you for sharing those. And let's see. All right, some more questions have rolled in. Blocking access to 56th Avenue West from Montbello seems tough. With that said, 56 median looked big. If the residents don't like the improvements, will we be doing the same thing to the 56th Avenue median in the future? So unfortunately, I don't fully understand your question there. Whoever asked this question, if you maybe could come off.
Hi, Dana. It's Chris.
Ask that question.
Sorry. So what I was kind of referring to is like, you know how Green Valley Ranch Boulevard, you're reducing the median from 40 feet to 20 feet. So I'm thinking, with, 56, kind of not having that access, or I guess going, for cars to go toward the city, toward west. Like I just from the top of my head, I mentioned this to a few of my friends here that live in Montbello, my girlfriend, and they definitely didn't like the idea of having that median block, one of my streets, Worcester, right? Couldn't turn on Worcester to going west on 56. I just know that for sure. Like already, some people already were like, I don't like that. So I don't know. So I guess my question was just more so like, if we, just, I guess more so of a comment, and also just like, maybe future plan, that median that it does allow turning into those other streets or so. So that's where I was kind of going with that. So I don't know if anybody else feels that same connection for any other little streets in the Montbello neighborhood. I currently live in Avion, but I visit my father in Montbello, Worcester. So I don't know, block. It's, I could see where it would help. I don't know. I think.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, Chris. We are certainly going to be limiting the access with those medians. I think, thank you for sharing that concern. In general, we do include those kind of continuous medians because they both help the flow of traffic and really contribute to safety. if we allow access at every intersection. Often that leads to a lot of safety issues. But yeah, we're certainly aware that that can change the access and your habits of getting where you need to go. So we certainly appreciate your comment. We can think about all those access points, so we'll include that comment here. But that's generally why we sometimes limit those through the medians. All right, question here from Chester. Is it possible to move up the start of this project? We are backed up probably in this neighborhood. Chester, I'm assuming you're talking about the 56th Avenue project. I'm gonna turn it over to Deb to talk about why this timeline looks the way it is.
Sure, we're going out hopefully in the next month for the design build contractor. And because we basically have a concept design right now, which is a 2D drawing. So as they take that in, into more constructible drawings, there might be early construction that might start happening even in late 21 or even 22. We're trying to push this up as fast as possible, which is why we went to a design build project. But hopefully you will start seeing construction out there, hopefully in late 21, but by 22 at the latest. I believe it's supposed to be completed in 22 as well.
Yeah, I think we said at the outside it would be early 2023, but hopefully 2022. Yep. We're moving as fast as we can and where we can, Chester.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Larry.
That's not a good statement for us that lived out here all these years. 56th Avenue has been a pain in the you-know-what for decades. And and as a matter of fact, I'm still stunned that this is the design stage right now. From my perspective, I would have thought that would have been done at least 2 or 3 years ago. And we're just sitting waiting for the funds in order to get it off the ground. You're hearing a lot of frustration from me, and I bet I'm not the only one. I can't tell you how many times using 56th Avenue, or when there's an issue on I-70, using 56th Avenue, we're crying out here. And if it's just possible to move this thing along, it would be greatly appreciated by the folks that live out here.
No, and we'll do everything we can, Larry. And we certainly understand your frustration. And I know Denver has looked for federal grant money for this corridor since we got the funding for Quebec Street to Havana. And then we were able to move some of that funding over to the Pena intersection. And then we were lucky with the bond that the voters approved the bond. So we've been able to move it forward from that time. So, but yeah, we'll continue to try to push this as quickly as we possibly can. And we understand that, yeah, generally Denver doesn't do widening projects anymore, capacity projects anymore, but we're very aware that this is a huge need in this community.
So this is Scott. I did want to speak to that. I get your concern, Mr. Murray. You know me, I've lived out here 50 years and it's been frustrating for the community. To see that in the Stapleton or the Central Park community, that their 56 got widened. Out in Green Valley Ranch, theirs is widened. Everybody's is widened except Montbello. DOTI and Dana and her team, Deb and their team, we are lucky enough that the bond passed with the voters voting on this to get the funding to widen this road. There was always the thought that they would want to widen it to 6 lanes, which would have meant they would have had to move the power lines, which would have never happened. So that was a pipe dream that was just a pipe dream anyway. So we are lucky now that we have gotten the funding through the bond. The money has been dedicated to this project and they are moving forward. And I know they're moving forward quickly. Some of these bond projects that got passed a couple years ago will take 10 years to complete. And so they are moving this forward quickly and that it's going to get done. And I know there's a lot of frustrations and I just drove 56 and that's why I got on this call, because I thought it was important that I was on this call. So just know that the team is working hard on it. And I know there's a lot of frustration. So I did want to throw that in though.
Yeah, Thanks, Larry. I didn't mean to imply that you haven't been waiting for this for a while. But we do have some good advocates, and Councilwoman Gilmore has also made this a big priority. And since we have the funding, we're moving this and we're going to have it in a couple years. So we just got to hang on, keep pushing. All right, let's see. I think there aren't any more questions that have popped up. If you do have any more burning questions, we have about 8 minutes left tonight. Thank you all for sticking with us and sharing your thoughts and asking your questions. If there are other ones, I invite you to unmute and go ahead and or raise your hand and ask a question. If not, I'll have the team flash the PowerPoint through the contact information for both of these projects. You can always email either of these project emails as well if you have additional comments. I will be conglomerating all of the comments as well as questions from the meeting tonight. There will be summaries completed for this meeting as well, and you can follow along in that way. And then you always have my email as well if you have general questions about these projects or other projects that are coming up in your neighborhood at dana.hoffman@denvergov.org. All right.
Just to piggyback off that, if you know anyone who is a Spanish speaker, they are totally free to email any of these email addresses and ask those questions and provide feedback if you know someone who wasn't able to attend.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, we will be providing Spanish translation and interpretation throughout the course of these two projects. So if you do know anyone in the community who was potentially reluctant to attend, please let them know that we are going to be providing those services throughout the life of these projects. Okay, thank you guys for sticking with us to the end. I'm going to give it another awkward 30 seconds to 2 minutes if questions come up your way. Otherwise, we can give you about 6 minutes left to your evening.
Dana, this is Pam Jiner. Can I ask a question about the Peoria Street sidewalks that are going to be installed now that CDOT has finished the underpass?
Yeah, go right ahead, Pam.
Do you know when you guys are going to start that project to put those sidewalks down?
Yep, I know that project is a little bit delayed. So we obviously still have the funding, and the section that we had talked about with you stakeholders is on the docket. It was actually put out for contract and received no bids. So it was a little delayed in the final design from working through some issues with CDOT and making sure we were fully coordinated on the drainage front. But then we did put it out to bid about a month and a half ago and didn't get any responses, which may have to do with the size of the project. So what we're looking to do at this point, Pam, is to combine it with just 1 or 2 other projects that are also right on tap to go, and rebid it out so that as a little bit of a larger project, we'll get more folks bidding in so that we can complete it. So I really had hoped that we would get it done by the end of this year, but with the rebid, it's going to be early next year. And we'll come back to the Peoria Stakeholder Working Group in the next month or 2 to give you guys an update on the whole project and on phase 1 with the sidewalks as well. Hopefully by that point, I'll have a really good answer for you, and we have someone on tap to get the work done.
Thanks, Dana.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate your feedback, your comments, or questions. And we'll be coming back to you as these projects move forward. Good night.